Our first speaker is Her Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, Ms. Luminița Odobescu.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, it's a great honor and also great pleasure to be here with you today, even though regretful only for a short while, as I have to join my Belgian colleague who is paying an official visit to Romania, and we will go together to visit the Belgian troops in Cincu. Allow me to start by thanking the first Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine for being today with us, and to assure you once again about Romania's strong support for Ukraine as long as it takes. This debate is a great opportunity to give context regarding the investment opportunities in key sectors of the initiative, energy sector, transportation, but also digital. I'm sure it will provide us with a lot of food for thought. As we move into mature phase of the initiative, it is crucial to focus on tangible outcomes and on strategic projects. We can thus unlock the potential of economic growth in our regions while strengthening the transatlantic ties and creating business opportunities in the region. At the first business summit hosted in Bucharest in 2018, we laid the foundation of the 3Cs Initiative Investment Fund. Today, this represents an important financial mechanism contributing to fill in the infrastructure gaps in our region. Nevertheless, and we are all aware, there are still many projects with strategic and economic potential that require financing. This is why this year we have invited representatives of the most relevant international financial institutions and investment funds to take part in our endeavor to boost regional cooperation, to boost regional business, and to find the best opportunities for business. Our region has a solid investment potential, as proved by the very dynamic business and investment environment. And our business environment requires more infrastructure development, and, as I said, in energy, transportation, and digital, while paying attention to strategic objectives of interconnection and green transition. These past years have shown that attracting investment is one of the main goals when it comes to building a secure and resilient strategy for economic development in our region. From this point of view, even in a geopolitical environment marked by serious challenges, and I'm speaking about the war at our borders, Romania has emerged as a regional stability factor. This reality was confirmed by more than 11 billion euros of foreign investment attracted by Romania last year, an all-time record. This year, preliminary data suggest an even more positive outlook, with foreign investment continuing to contribute to growth and development. Although we are developing and we are developing at a faster rate than the EU average, the current geopolitical context compels us to increase our efforts to develop our economies. And this is not an easy task. New economic realities are emerging, and we must adapt to a fast-changing geo-economic context. Recalling once again the enormous economic potential of the 3Cs regions, we need to provide investment-friendly policies. We need to encourage growth. We need to use all the financial opportunities in a coherent and articulated way. The current edition of the Business Forum, bringing together participants from almost all continents, represents a big step forward in this respect, consolidating the investment pillar of the 3Cs initiative. As a platform dedicated to promoting investment in regional infrastructure projects, the 3Cs initiative holds the key to enhancing our resilience and prosperity. To achieve this transformative impact, it is imperative that we, governments, private sector entities, financial institutions, commit our joint efforts to ensuring the success of our joint endeavor. I'm confident that this important subject and its untapped potential, as well the wide representation of the business community, will enable a rich exchange of ideas that will hopefully pave the way for the so much needed investment projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And let me ask you briefly, how do you think that the complicated regional context linked mainly to the conflict in Ukraine will eventually rebuild the fundamentals of energy security and investments in the energy sector in the 3Cs initiative region?
Thank you for the question. We have seen that the brutal, illegal war in Ukraine had several consequences in a lot of areas. And one of these area is related with the energy. And we realize the meaning of energy security last year when we saw the dependence, high dependence on unpredictable supplier. And our objective was quickly to find solutions for cutting this bad dependence, for strengthening our security, for this diversification. And Romania's strategy was not only for Romania, it was for our regions. Our objective was to coordinate strongly with our partners in order to ensure energy security in our regions. So this was a priority objective for Romania's policy in the field of energy. And for example, my country monitored and continues to monitor the regional energy security, to identify platforms for diversifying cooperation with reliable actors and in the energy area. And our cooperation with partners from the 3Cs initiative is relevant in the energy field. It's in fact one of the main pillars of the initiatives, and I'm glad that detailed discussions happened right now in a panel dedicated to the energy. When we say connectivity, because this is a key word when we are discussing about the 3Cs initiative, it means connectivity, interconnectivity in all the three sectors. And energy is key. We cannot allow anyone to blackmail. And our objective was really to strengthen the cooperation. And I think the results in the field of energy through concrete projects of diversification in close coordination with our partners. I'm speaking about our US partners, but not only, with partners from Europe as well. So our objective was really to reduce the dependence and to ensure the regional energy security. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, let me give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Yulia Sviridenko, First Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine and Minister of Economy. Please.
Thank you. Thank you. Dear colleagues, dear partners, I'm honored to address to such estimated audience and during this round table to discuss the future of Ukraine and to discuss actually the Ukraine plan and linkage with the three Cs platform. So I would start with the fact that during the full-scale Russia war, our economy shows resilience. Our local business demonstrate that they are reliable economic supporter for Ukrainian soldiers, defining our country at the front line. And the war significantly shaped the infrastructure agenda in our country. New routes of goods transit in land and maritime transportation and energy infrastructure connection are facing changes for the upcoming decades. And Ukraine's contribution to sustainable infrastructure in our region is vital. Hence, the 3C platform is an excellent opportunity to discuss improving of the regional economic cooperation among our countries. I think that everybody understands that the reconstruction of Ukraine is going to be the biggest reconstruction from the starting from the World War II, and of course we understand that the private sector is going to be the core of this reconstruction. And now we are like a government working on we called it like zero level of reconstruction. So we are working on the mining of the Ukrainian territory. We are trying to restore the energy and housing infrastructure. We are providing the regulation. However, the need for more financing is huge, especially in the infrastructure area. So government of Ukraine right now is developing 4-year economic plan. So it calls Ukraine facility plan. So representing Ukraine's economic growth vision for the next 4 years. Proposed reforms and investment will be focused, among others, on helping rebuild and modernize Ukraine and facilitating EU accession. The central part of this plan will ensure a realistic focus and a clear prioritization and sequencing on reforms and investment. So we identify, like a government, among others, that energy, infrastructure, transport and logistics, IT and digital infrastructure are the key economics sector and the most significant potential to unleash growth. Therefore, boosting investment in these sectors is absolutely in line with the focus of the 4C initiative. On energy infrastructure, we would focus on ensuring green transition and development of renewable energy, on liberalization of energy market, on integration markets and infrastructure to the EU, construction of new decentralized generation, including energy storage capacity. So on transport infrastructure and logistics, we would like to restore and develop expert logistics, with this, then upgrading transport networks, current transport networks, and implementing key reforms to foster alignment with the EU acquis. On IT and digitalization, we will focus on fostering innovation, developing a robust and competitive digital ecosystem, including the development of innovation parks and hubs. So we understand that our victory is inevitable, but therefore I think that it's essential for private sector to get some insurance from Ukrainian government and from their government during the wartime. So we understand that war risk insurance would play a very essential, considerable role in unlocking the flow of foreign investment during the wartime. So we welcome all existing ecosystem that providing insurance, and of course it rather limit tools, and we're trying to work with our partners, and we work together with MIGA, with DFC, with EBRD, and national expert credit agencies to be able to provide insurance for foreign companies willing to participate in reconstruction even during the wartime. Of course, the lack of the Black Sea grain shipment insurance is still the issue we are suffering from. On our side, we are now developing the potential state backstop and ad hoc insurance for global reinsurers. However, it will be limited, and we are seeking for the significant support from our partners and from our donors. So we're keen on this discussion. Feasibilities are specifically crucial for looking the financial solution. And I think that the innovative fund, investment fund that have been launched I think might play a significant role in enabling investment into such long-term projects like energy, transport, and digital transformation. As I mentioned, the private sector will be crucial, and it will play the leading role. And if you look at the report provided by the World Bank, you're absolutely right, the damages caused by Russian aggression is huge. So it's around, for now, it's around 400 billion US dollars. But of course, you might witness every day we have additional massive missiles attacks. So it means that damages caused by Russian aggression would be even higher. So that's why it means that if you look at the numbers, so understand perfectly well, so 80% would be covered by the private sector, I mean by private investment. And it's not about the nation, it's about business itself. So that's why from our side we are working on risk insurance by different expert credit agency, so to encourage the companies from the 3C platform to step into Ukrainian private sector. So I want to express my gratitude for the support of Ukraine once again. And thank you once again for your belief in our victory. I believe that becoming a part of Ukrainian recovery today is the most influential investment in our common future with shared values. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. And of course, thank you for your fight. You fight for all of us. One follow-up question, if I may. How do you see the role of the three Cs in the reconstruction of Ukraine? Because it's not too early to discuss it.
I think it's very important for the 3Cs initiative to be able to find the practical implementation of this platform. So I think that it can be a concrete tool for the implementation of the projects in energy, in transport, like we discussed previously. So that's why I think that it might become a very practical instrument for investment implementation. So, and I think that it's very important that we should move as quickly as possible from the political discussion to practical implementation of this initiative. And that's why it's very important to set up a secretariat, to set up a team that would work on the concrete projects. And that's why I think that Ukraine in this case would be able to join and to implement projects in this area that we have talked about.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I believe the issue of risk insurance that you raised is very, very important indeed. Thank you. Now I give the floor to His Excellency Ambassador Lazar Comanescu, Secretary General, Black Sea Economic Cooperation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, dear Professor Vojna, and dear friend, dear Liviu. Let me start by sharing with you how pleased and honored I am to be here today, let alone the fact that being a Romanian, I'm always pleased to be back in Bucharest. But I am very much pleased and honored to participate in this roundtable dedicated to a very extremely important topic, and to be together with such distinguished speakers, panelists. But there is also kind of a personal dimension of me being pleased and honored to be here today. I guess I may be the only here in this room who had the honor and the privilege to participate at the birth of the 3SI. I was in New York in September 2015 when this initiative was launched. By the time I was diplomatic advisor of the Romanian president. And second, 5 years ago, when Romania hosted for the first time the 3SI summit, it was here that the business forum of the 3SI was born. And I was one of those in the team which worked for preparing the launching of this business forum. And you may imagine that I look at that as kind of coming back to something which is very dear to me. And now, in between, looking at things, how they evolved, and looking at them also for more than 2 years from where I am now as Secretary General of the Black Sea Economic Organization, I continue to follow with particular attention the evolution of this project, and I have reasons to say that we may congratulate ourselves about how this project has evolved. And this reason for congratulations becomes even more important if we look into the fact that the project has evolved despite developments in our region, unhappy developments in our region after the initiative was launched and the business forum was launched. I am, of course, referring to the war in Ukraine. And reasons for optimism are, for me at least, increasing after having heard what the heads of state of the CSI here in Bucharest were saying yesterday, and also looking into the very substantive declaration they adopted. With all that in mind, I would allow myself a few remarks, personal remarks. Once again, I think that we have reasons to congratulate the organizers for dedicating a special roundtable to the investment issues. Because we have to recognize that the further success of the 3SI depends on what resources, human or financial, are invested in it. I am not dwell on volumes or figures, but rather on what seems to me to be needed for the best and most efficient, profitable, I would say, use of any resource invested in this initiative. My first remark. The most significant development in the 3SI is, in my opinion, the establishment of the operationalization of the 3SI investment fund. The amount already available therein is significant, but realistically speaking, given the huge needs in the region, it can only be a catalyzer. As rightly pointed out today by President Iohannis. Therefrom comes the importance and necessity of seeking complementarities, interaction with other financial and banking institutions. And I'm glad to see that many of them, the most important of them, are here present in Bucharest. My second remark. I think that it deserves to be appreciated. We deserve to appreciate the efforts made to define, efforts made so far, to define and agree on a list of priority projects. And in my personal opinion, again, looking into the situation in the region, it's good that almost half of the projects selected are in the area of transportation, because infrastructure transportation is key for facilitating business. But I think that there is still, however, room for even more narrowing, if I may say so, the list, and to concentrate on those projects which are really of regional dimension. Because my personal view is that there are projects in the list which are predominantly of national dimension. And that brings me to another aspect. I realize that there are panels on railway transport, road transport, But I think that water transportation in this part of Europe is extremely important as well. And I'm thinking first and foremost at the benefits, the transformation of the Danube River into real waterway transportation all throughout the year would be of great benefit, both in costs and in protecting the environment. And not to forget that through such a way of transportation, link further to the east via the Black Sea, Caucasus, Caspian, that may open new opportunities for business. My third remark, I very much welcome the enlargement of the CSI, with Greece having become, since yesterday, the 30th member of the CSI. Coincidence, the BISEC Economic Organization consists also of 13 members. And the fact that 3 members of the CSI are also members of the BISEC may help in strengthening the cooperation between these two organizations. And I also think it's extremely valuable, and this I very much welcome, the drive towards east and southeast of the CSI initiative with the invitation of Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova. But also I think that we should look, the CSI should look also definitely to the Western Balkans and further to the east as well. And Turkey here is one extremely important actor, and Georgia, of course. My fourth, fourth remark. I already referred to the idea of complementarities. I think that connecting, finding synergies and complementarities with other regional organizations is extremely important as well. Not least because, or due to the fact that there are ideas, including in terms of business, developed in other regional organizations, and I think that correlating them would help in better shaping and better using the money available. Finally, la raison d'être, as the French would say, of the existence of the CSI Business Forum is bringing together representatives of the entrepreneurial communities from the region and beyond. Its potential is still to be fully used. Particularly, I would like to stress, not only in having the entrepreneurial communities participating in this type of gatherings, but also in shaping and taking decisions upon what type and which projects should be given priority. And here, I remember that when the forum was established, when the business forum was established, an extremely important, and in particular role was given to the setting up of a network of the chambers of commerce of the 3SI. I wonder, and I would like to see this network being as active as possible. And not to forget about the fact that the exchange of good practices may be also useful. And in this context, I will allow myself to say that we in the Black Sea Economic Organization avail of the Business Council. And I think that a kind of interconnection and link between this type of entrepreneurial organizations would be for the benefit of the success of this organization. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you, Ambassador. I wanted to ask you, how do you see the interaction between Free Seas and other regional organizations?
Well, as I already referred to, first of all, I do think that it is extremely important to have it, to develop it. Well, I mentioned, I referred to, no surprise, first to the Black Sea Economic Organization, but let's not forget, for example, that there is a regional cooperation center in the Western Balkans. There is the Central European Initiative. And we in the BISEC, we organized this type of, joint meetings. And I think that periodical or whatever, systematic exchange of meeting of representatives of the business from these organizations would help, as I said, in devising the best way how to use the money available for investment within the CSI. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, Her Excellency, U.S. Ambassador Georgette Mosbacher, co-chair of the Free Seas Programming at the Atlantic Council. Atlantic Council being probably at the forefront of U.S. support for free seas. Thank you.
Thank you. I find myself in the role of being the reality check, but I guess I volunteered for that. So I'm at the risk of telling you things that some of you may not want to hear, but here I go. Let me just say that this initiative came about 8 years ago. It is really extraordinary, innovative. The fund was, to have 12 countries willing to put money, I mean governments to put money in a fund was really extraordinary in itself. The fund's been successful, the money's been spent, the projects that it was spent on, far as I can see, have been successful, well managed. However, the fund was supposed to attract $4 billion in private sector money in 5 years to match that billion, and that hasn't happened. So now the fund is deplete, and we've had, I think, 8 summits. So where have we gone since then? I would argue we are paralyzed, frozen. We've had very good ideas, very interesting. Just today, the speakers have made a lot of sense, made important points, but they always make sense and they always make important points at these summits because we get the best and the brightest. The question is, what do we do about them when we leave the room? And the fact is, we haven't done anything in the last 5 years. Now, I'm going to drop a name. I called my friend Larry Fink at BlackRock and asked him, said, Larry, I need some advice. I'm co-chair of the 3 Seas Initiative at the Atlantic Council, and we had this fund, and we have $1 trillion worth of infrastructure we have to fund, and we haven't attracted any private sector money. What are we doing wrong? Could I have your advice? And I was lucky. Larry says, come on over to BlackRock. I go to the offices, I walk in, and there is 3 monitors, head of investments from BlackRock Paris, London, Mexico City, around the table. I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to have to send him a case of something, you know, really good red wine after this, and how lucky I was to have the 2 hours. And they had never heard of the 3 Seas Initiative, let alone the 3 Seas Fund. I didn't find that particularly surprising because if you ask around the region, no one's heard of the 3 Seas Fund or the 3 Seas Initiative except the people in this room. And I've been at this for 5 years. So I left there 2 hours later, all this good advice and knowledge, and I realized, now what do I do? Who do I call? Where do I go? What do I do with this? Who can I impart this information to? And I realized there wasn't anyone. Because as fabulous, and you have an incredible story to tell here. This isn't difficult sales. This isn't a sales pitch that's difficult. I mean, after all, you got 100 million people, you've got your GDP at twice the rate of the West. You've got 14 or 15% you give to the EU GDP, contribute. So you've got a power base here, and you have a real story to tell. This shouldn't be difficult to sell. But you haven't sold it. We haven't attracted any private sector money. So I ask all of you here today, with all these great ideas and how we need to do this, how do you do it? Maybe what we should be concentrating on is how do we attract that private sector money that we all agree we need $1 trillion worth of in order to get where you want to get in Central Eastern Europe. So, having said that, the first thing, and what's frustrating about this for me, and I hope we don't have any fruit in the room, so nobody can throw anything at me, okay? And I have white on, so it's stained, is that we've been talking about a secretariat for as long as I can remember. And the truth is, how does the initiative, if you don't institutionalize this structure, and you don't have a full-time 3Cs secretariat that's working 24/7, that can answer questions with a website, with a telephone number you can call, then how does anyone know what the heck's going on here? Or what the 3Cs is? Or what the 3Cs fund? You spent the $1 billion already. So how are you going to attract the rest? And then I decided, well, I only have 5 minutes, so how do I do this? So I decided to do something, to do it as a example. Let's take what's just happened in Ukraine, and that number apparently is $1 trillion too, to rebuild Ukraine. So there's kind of an equal, to rebuild Ukraine, $1 trillion, and $1 trillion needed in Central Eastern Europe to get your infrastructure to Western standards. And by the way, if you don't do that, you can't be competitive. So you should be really worried, all right? So, because the competition out there is really tough. To that point, let me tell you what your competition's doing. And I'm going to make just an example. Let me tell you what Ukraine's doing. President Zelensky, he called up BlackRock and JP Morgan Chase, and he said, look, we're going to have $1 trillion. We've got to build this country back. And he says, I need your advice. And okay, so they said, well, you probably need a development fund. And let's maybe go one step further. Maybe you need a development bank. Okay? Well, you got 100 million people in the 3Cs, so I would say worth looking at, worth considering. Anyway, so I'm reading this. So many of today's long-term challenges are best addressed through blended finance. You need vehicles to mobilize capital at scale. Now, our investment manager did a good job, but maybe it's time for us to step this up, spend the money on the talented people that can really tell us how we got to this $1 trillion. So what is blended capital? I'm not here, most of you know what that is, but the point is we certainly haven't approached that. This fund needs to seek to raise low-cost capital from governments, donors, and international financial institutions and leverage it to attract between 5 and 10 times as much in private investment. Well, we didn't do that with the first fund. We need to do it with the next fund. Public sector investors, they want to see certain things like transparency, and but we know all of those. I'm not going to bore you with that list. We all know what an investor wants to see, all right? I firmly believe that Central Eastern Europe, that you have, that list exists, all right? So let's get back to one, if you don't even have an office, and everyone's worried about a big bureaucracy, and believe me, if the one thing I learned as ambassador was I walked from the private sector, walked into the public sector, and learned my biggest challenge was bureaucracy. It was all about process and not about results. And that was tough for me coming from the private sector because it's all about results in the private sector or you're gone. So you always look at your competition and say, well, God, let's hope they don't do something that's better value and better quality, because if they do, you're out of business. All right. Secretariat. We need to staff it with just a handful of really good people. For example, you need a CEO. You've got 13 countries. Can you imagine? What's the quote about, let me see if I have it here. Oh, yeah, here's the quote. Too many cooks spoil the broth. Attempts to manage by committee often results in decision paralysis due to petty disagreements, hindering progress and preventing any decisive actions. Well, I can promise you that the CEO of Disney does not go to his board of directors to ask what movies they should make. The 13 countries you need to hire the brightest and the best CEO and let them make the decisions. You have a board of directors to check that there isn't corruption, et cetera. But you can't have 13 countries making decisions. It's not going to work, and it hasn't worked, right? So the first thing you have to do is hire someone that those 13 countries trust to lead this. You need a salesman. You need someone who can go around to the sovereign wealth funds, the big infrastructure funds, and there's many, and take your message to them of what these infrastructure projects are and how they will give them a rate of return and how attractive they are, because the region is very attractive, and it is. You need a regulatory analyst, someone who can take a look at the 13 countries, these cross-border projects, and what legislation or what needs to be changed in each one of those countries in order for that to be successful. So he can go to, or she can go to those countries and say, hey, you have to do this or do this if we're going to get that road through, or we're going to get those tracks through, or we're going to build whatever. Those are just 3 examples of what this office should have. Doesn't need much more. You need a quarterly newsletter to make sure that it's on the desk of every sovereign wealth fund, every infrastructure fund in the world on a quarterly basis. Even if they don't read it, they're going to see the 3 C's initiative, or 3 C's development bank, 3 C's fund, and you're going to build your brand. And you won't be walking into BlackRock. I won't be walking into BlackRock where they say, never heard of 3 C's initiative or the 3 C's fund. It's all about branding today, like it or not, but that's the truth. What is 3 C's initiative? What is 3 C's fund? What is it that we are selling? And we got a great story and a great product. So those are just some basics. In the European Union, if one of you go and want to discuss a policy, they're not going to pay attention to you. What do you have, 3 million people? Hire one lobbyist. I know, bad word, but I'm dealing with reality here in the real world. Hire one lobbyist, represents 100 million people. They're going to listen now. So that you have a voice in the EU with respect to the regulations that will affect the success of these projects and these investments. So I'm just giving you a little overview of how I feel that this has to be, if we don't find a way to ultimately truly make this real, we will continue to have more conferences and more white papers that nobody reads. That's I'm just touching on it. And to go back to, I was in London when when was it? I think it was June, when they had the big summit for the reconstruction of Ukraine. And I was wondering as I was sitting there, why was it in London? I mean, this is the region. You're the neighbors. This is the region that should be first and foremost in rebuilding Ukraine. Why was it in London? And then I went a little further, and I found a website that the Germans put up, okay? The German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development launched a new digital platform to reinforce German commitment to the reconstruction process in Ukraine. Where is our platform to reinforce the reconstruction process in Central Eastern Europe, in the 3 Seas region? And to go further, example, with the platform's launch, intends to advance preparations for reconstruction at an early stage. The new pooling platform aims to connect non-state actors, exchange information, and boost economic opportunities for the businesses involved. The platform is designed to become a venue for networking, dialogue, information gathering in order to unite people who would otherwise not be able to get together. That's just a couple of paragraphs if you go to the website. Where's ours? Where's the 3 Seas initiative? Where's our website that you can all go to, that we can leave this room today and actually connect? Or take a look at what are these infrastructure projects that we can invest in. There are, what did I do wrong? Am I saying infrastructure? Infrastructure, did I use the wrong word? All right, anyway. I guess the long and short of it is, as I said, I'm here as the reality check in the seat, and I volunteered for this, so I'm not, but look, I'm not getting paid for this, okay? I've taken this role on because I truly believe in the 3 Seas initiative. I believe in what the 3 Seas Fund can be. And I believe in what a regional reconstruction bank can be. And that's why I'm here. So I may not make a lot of friends here, but I can at least leave here knowing that I feel that I've been honest about my belief in what this can be, but another summit is not something I need to go to unless we have some concrete movement. This is it. It's been 8 of them, 8 summits.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador.
It's
It's a very passionate.
now I'll go to my
and
American
comprehensive-
Diet Coke and
Okay.
be reinforced. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. I wanted to ask you about attracting private sector money, but you already provided a very comprehensive answer, I believe, to this.
You have a question for me?
I wanted to ask you about private sector money, but you already provided.
Everybody wants to know about private sector money. Yeah. We all want to know about that. So that's the question I'm walking out of here and leaving to all of you.
So let's move.
How do we get it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So let's move on to Mr. Raresh Burlacu, President of the Romanian Agency for investment and foreign trade.
Thank you, Professor Vuenia. I'm trying to stay calm. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed co-panelists, distinguished guests, I'm truly honored to stand before you today at the Three Seas Business Forum in Bucharest, a city that proudly hosts this esteemed event for the second time, as already President of Romania, Mr. Klaus Iohannis, mentioned during his speech. I want to express my gratitude to all of you for your unwavering commitment to the development of the Three Seas region. Your dedication and hard work are instrumental in driving progress in this pivotal part of the world. Romania's strategic location within the Three Seas region along the Black Sea and in proximity to the Caucasus, place it at the crossroads of tremendous opportunities. This geographical advantage offers a gateway for cooperation, safety and growth, not only for Romania, but also for our European neighbors. It paves the way for the development of nearshoring initiatives and the establishment of secure supply chains, bolstering the resilience of our European countries. Moreover, Romania serves as a vital bridge between European Union and non-EU nations, fostering dialogue, as you can see, cooperation and cultural exchange. This unique position enables us to forge connections, both economically and diplomatically, that have the potential to enhance stability and prosperity throughout the region. But we have our challenges. So the path to becoming a member of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development holds immense significance for us, marking our most substantial undertaking since our accession to the European Union. Romania's commitment to adhering the OECD principles has been steadfast, with a long-standing track record of implementing the organization's recommendations dating back to the mid-20s. With our accession, we reaffirm our commitment to creating an environment characterized by investor-friendly policies, alignment with international standards, and the strengthening of the rule of law. This process will undoubtedly have far-reaching effects on the regional collaboration, driving essential policy reform, bolstering investor confidence, and fostering investment in innovation and technology. Interregional cooperation stands as a pivotal element in the journey towards achieving common goals among the countries within the Three Seas region. It underscores the pressing need for collective action and collaboration, recognizing that together we are stronger. By embracing win-win approaches, we ensure that the benefits of our efforts are shared among all member nations. Foreign direct investments in this context plays a crucial role in building not just economies, but also communities. It becomes a driving force for delivering prosperity to our citizens, enhancing the quality of life, and fostering a sense of unity and interconnectedness among our nations. Through cooperations and a shared commitment to the welfare of our people, we can truly unlock the potential of the Three Seas region and chart a course towards a brighter, more prosperous future for all. It is essential for fostering innovation and technology, which in turn drive progress and job creation. This commitment reflects our dedication not only meeting the needs of today, but also ensuring a prosperous and sustainable future for generations to come. Romania stands committed to the core objectives of the Three Seas Initiative. Our dedication remains unwavering in our pursuit of a robust increase in economic development within the region. We firmly believe that this progress is not only possible, but essential for the prosperity of our nations. Furthermore, Romania is fully aligned with the goal of strengthening the cohesion of the European Union, recognizing that a united Europe is a stronger Europe. Lastly, we are steadfast in our efforts to enrich transatlantic ties, fostering strong partnerships that transcend borders and continents. These objectives continue to guide our actions, and we are determined to work collaboratively with our fellow nations to achieve them, leading to a bright future for all. As we reflect on our discussion today and the path forward, we see a promising horizon for the Three Seas region. The journey ahead is one of collective growth, resilience, and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Mr. Helge Berger, Deputy Director of the European Department, International Monetary Fund. And
thank you so much, Livio. Also to our hosts for this spectacular event. I must say this is the largest small conference room I've ever been in. This is an important event. I think, as you know, the International Monetary Fund is active in all of the Three Seas initiative countries. We have a very strong program active in Ukraine, so the discussion about the needs of Ukraine are clearly dear and very familiar to us. But I think mostly we're happy to be here because this is a time where we are looking at the region, but also at the rest of Europe with some concern. The concern comes from the fact that we are in a period of slowing growth, and we are in a period of diminished medium-term growth expectations. And at the same time, we're in a period of very high rates of inflation that in the region, in many countries, are still in the 3 digits. Now, this is what makes investment as a topic, and that's our topic today in this panel, so crucial. Investment can be a source of growth in the short term. Yeah, we are all familiar with this concept, but what the advantage of investment-driven growth is that it will also help create growth that, at least in the medium term, will help to lower inflation by increasing potential output and, in general, expanding supply. So it's an important time. It's also an important time because investment in the region is still an area where we have enormous gaps to the rest of Europe, especially the older EU member countries in the continent. If you look at statistics that measure the capital endowment of the 100 million people living in the region and compare it with the European Union average further west among the EU original 13 members, then for the majority of countries in the region, that capital stock is still at or below 1/3 of what these more advanced economies further west bring to the table when it comes to creating output. This is a huge gap on the aggregate for most of these economies. What are the reasons? It is convergence that takes time, but there are also concerns about regulation, about governance, and in general, at least at the current point, given high inflation, given macroeconomic volatility, a general uncertainty about the future that holds back private sector investment. But another aspect of that enormous capital gap that the region still has and will want to fill is that public investment has generally been falling short of what is needed to bring the region to convergence with the older EU members. On average, public infrastructure is about at 50% of the public infrastructure per person that we observe in other countries. And as you know, and this is why we're here, financing is an enormous part of this problem. And this gap will be higher going forward, not lower, because we know that we need to invest into green growth, into climate policies, which are also costly. So what can we do? As far as private investment is concerned, I would, in addition to the many issues that have already been put on the table today, stress that the macroeconomic environment is an important element of this. We need macroeconomic stability, which at the moment means foremost price stability in Europe, including in this region. This is what creates an environment in which investors can plan. And so we have our work cut out for us, both in terms of the central banks in the region and in terms of the fiscal policies in the region. But another aspect, which is a tool that we can use going forward, is public investment. public investment is a area that we all have discussed not only today but previously. It's hard to underestimate the benefits of solving these bottleneck problems that exist. I think, Livio, you already mentioned, the IMF study that said, every euro spent within the region could yield in the medium term more than 2.5 as many going forward. And you also asked, is this still true? I would say yes. It's not only true, I think the numbers are probably higher if we do them today, just because of the enormous changes all our economies are facing. We have a changed trade framework, geo-economic fragmentation, Russia's war in Ukraine have changed the way we trade with each other, and more changes are coming. We have the climate challenge, and so all of this makes public investment even more important. Now, the question is how to strengthen it, and we talked already about the involvement of the private sector, and maybe we can come back to this. But I think a core issue is strengthening public finances to actually shoulder some of these challenges going forward. This is a very tall order. We already talked about weak growth, which means often also lower tax revenues. We had the COVID shock, we had the energy price shock, that's particularly tough for the region. We have demographic challenges, we have aging populations, we have increased defense spending, we have higher interest rates, at least at the moment. So it is important to look at our ability to prioritize spending. We have to make sure that as we adjust our budgets to these realities of the moment, that we protect what is crucial for future growth, that is public investment, but we also need, of course, to protect the most vulnerable in our economies to make sure that the burdens are equally shared. For many countries in the region, especially, revenue mobilization is another area for policymakers to focus on. Often, the tax systems can be improved. There are gaps in the way we tax where we know we need to tax. There's efficiency gains in terms of tax administration. Many of you will know much more about this than I do, so these are areas to focus on. Let me end here.
Thank you. And just a short follow-up on what is needed to attract more private money from
Yeah, I thought you would let me get away without going there. I think for private sector investment, there is the important topic that we just covered of how to attract foreign direct investment, but I think just as important is the ability to attract domestic investment. And all of this speaks to the area of structural reform, which is a big word, but has very specific meaning for many of the countries in the region. It's about economic governance, the quality of government and how administration is executed. It's about making sure that our private firms have the freedom to enter markets, but also feel the need to exit a market when the time comes. Protecting competition, probably extremely important, and in an area where we are worried about energy prices, still making sure that we have market-guided allocation of resources in the energy price sector, in the energy sector, I think is crucial. Investors need to know and have some certainty around where the incentives and the market opportunities are going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to Ms. Jadwiga Emilewicz, Secretary of State, Government Plenipotentiary for Polish-Ukrainian Development Cooperation.
Thank you very much, Professor Wojna. I know that this is quite a long discussion and we are almost short of time, so I will try to be as brief as it is only possible. So let me first thank you very much for inviting me and for this marvelous discussion. And let me start from the brief comment. At the beginning of this panel, we had true women actually here, taking a leading roles in economy in 3 different countries. Madam Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, and basically Madam Deputy Prime Minister Sferidenko from Ukraine, responsible for one of the toughest, I would say, portfolio in Ukraine right now. And the third strong lady, Madam Ambassador Mosbacher, who takes a lead in many initiatives dedicated to Central Europe. So in the Polish language, economy is a feminine, so maybe it is the signum temporis that we are having this role here. But coming back to the topic of this panel is, I would like to say 3 brief points. So the first of all, just once again to repeat the potential of the region. So the 3C initiative is a really significant entity. If you think that this is a little bit more than 14% of European GDP, it is really something. If you think that this is 120 million people potential, it is once again a significant number. I remember myself being in DC 3 years ago as a Minister of Economy of Poland, telling to my American colleagues that in this region, we are having more IT managers than in the whole United States. So this is also another potential of this region which should not be omitted. And once again, the average growth rate in 3C countries is expected to be 3.2%, which is above Eurozone. So our economies are booming, I would say, although we did have a COVID crisis, energy crisis, and nowadays we are tackling very seriously. We treat your war, Julia, as our war as well. So that is why we are so deeply involved in everything what's going on in Ukraine. We are first in line from just after outbreak, and we do appreciate what you are doing in your country, and we are with you up to the end of this war, which we do believe will end soon, and we come back Ukraine in the shape as you want to have it at the end of the day. But coming back to 3C, what is the 3 challenges for this region? The first one, mentioned many times before, is improving resilience of 3C region, especially in the context of ongoing war in Ukraine. So the context of 3C has changed dramatically after 24th of February 2022. We do understand that this is not only the main goal, is not only to upgrade the political and financial potential of the region. We are now thinking about ourselves. The security is probably the main notion which is repeated in all our country. The second point is infrastructure. It is still underinvested region in Europe in terms of after the cohesion policy of the European Union has been oriented westward, eastward, what we repeated many times. Actually, the first investment oriented north-south is Via Carpathia. It is, once again, coming to the potential of this region. It is definitely not enough. We need a lot more roads and rails connection, interconnector in terms of energy, new pipelines, once again facing with the threat, Russia threat, and Russia dependence of the natural sources. So this is a vast amount of investment, which is very difficult to find any financial support in existing financial institutions. So let me put it as a comment. The second, the next point in infrastructure is, of course, cybersecurity. It is necessary to develop and promote the new address of collaboration in the framework of 3C initiative. So I warmly welcome the Innovation Fund being launched here. Probably it might serve in such solutions which are necessary for the region. The second point, which I mentioned before, there is a lot of infrastructure, cyber, rail, and roads investments that should be invested in, should be found here, should be located in the region. But what I mentioned before, there is a definitely need for a stable and long-term financing for those investments. And it is very difficult, as I mentioned, to find a financial framework for such investments. Why? For instance, Poland is not the target of EBRD because of our GDP, which is our success story is too strong to be the target for EBRD, for instance. It is very difficult as well, finding my colleagues in European Investment Bank, the greenest bank in the world, imagining that the European Investment Bank would find some interested products as rails, as roads or new gas pipelines, because it is also not a target for European Investment Bank nowadays. So this is definitely lack of financial instruments which are necessary to be established, gathering together in a one pot public money and the private money, because it is absolutely necessary if we want to upgrade the region. And the third point, which has been mentioned here and stressed strongly by Prime Minister Sverdenko, is, of course, the context of the war and the Ukraine. So that brings completely new dimension for 3C initiative. So it is one of the key targets for all our countries right now. And that is why, as I mentioned, we're deeply involved in the humanitarian support. Our countries in the region, and mainly Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Baltic countries, are now taking the lead in humanitarian support, being a hub for the support coming to Ukraine from many different directions. So that's true that the longest western border that Ukraine possesses is actually the Polish-Ukrainian border, but definitely the regional, the 3C border is a gate to the west for Ukraine. So we do understand our role that we need to play in that context. So for us, it's a clear 3 points in terms of Ukraine. So first, what has been mentioned and what I heard many times from my Ukrainian colleague, Ukraine wants to create a better Ukraine, better in terms of better standards, both in democracy, but also in terms of the infrastructural standards. So also in a different shape, reoriented to the West. What does it mean? We, once again, need to stress the new East-West thinking. We need to bring this East-West thinking, to change this East-West thinking towards North-South to Europe. So we definitely need to put some new ideas to the European thinking, to the European Commission, to find some extra policies being dedicated to implemented to grab Ukraine to West as soon as possible by specific investments oriented North-South, just to join Ukraine to this European potential. The third point is that European Union has lost his, let's say, the potential. If you think about the 10 biggest companies in the world, you can hardly find any European company inside. In the best 5, in the biggest 5 IT companies, none of them is the European. So we are talking a lot about reindustrialization of Europe for the last years. So definitely there is a new chance, new potential, because we are creating here in 3C, together with Ukraine, the industry, completely new industry potential, with all challenges connected with the green transformation. Anyway, we can create a new industrial hub for new Europe, because that could be the idea that can come from the region, including Ukraine, for Europe. And just the last words. So over last decade, West has lost its leading role in many developing countries in favor of China. It's both true for Europe and the United States. We have a chance to reverse this trend in Ukraine. We can create, there is a famous, fabulous notion, which I would say finally come to a bankruptcy, the Belt and Road. But let's change this coin once again. Let's create a new Belt and Road in Central Eastern, in 3C initiative, including Ukraine, with this economy and industrial potential. This is an ambitious task, I know, but definitely within the reach of the West. We need to go hand in hand to make it happen because, and this is my last word, the time for invest is now, not to wait for the day after in terms of the war in Ukraine. We need to mobilize ourselves and to invest in Ukraine right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And our next speaker is Mr. Volodymyr Kuzov, Deputy Minister of Economy, Ukraine.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Renoy, for inviting, and you know, it's especially important to have Ukraine voice here as well. So I'll be talking, and I'm glad to see here the business representatives, international financial institutions, development financial institutions, and investment promotion agencies, and you know, because it is expected that the private sector will be contributed most to the Ukrainian recovery, and infrastructure and economic recovery as well. So we realize that there are so many current and potential investors into Ukraine, but it's like, as the panelist said, it's extremely challenging as for now to attract private investors. And we are now looking for the different instruments from DFIs and IFIs, how to backstop them, how to by backing the support from the international institutions to boost up the private sector development in Ukraine. So I'll be talking about the private sector. In general, well, key sectors for private investments in Ukraine are defense, agri-production, and processing industries, energy, critical materials, green steel, sustainable transportation, and healthcare and IT, which in fact resonates well with the 3Cs initiative goals of rebuilding innovative and sustainable energy, transport, and digital infrastructure. Even more in this context, the potential successor on the upcoming the 3Cs investment fund can be extended also for particular infrastructure projects in Ukraine. For instance, on energy, we have already preliminary identified 65 potential projects, like the thermal energy, combined heat and power systems, modernization and expansion, greenfield projects in nuclear energy and oil and gas, implementation project of gas transmission systems operator of Ukraine, like compressor station renovations, also renewable energy projects like development of wind energy and development of the energy storage system in Ukraine, and so on and so forth. So there are lots of different projects we identified in the energy. Also on transport infrastructure and logistics, we have so far identified 31 potential projects in the form of public-private partnership and the concessions in road, railway, maritime and river infrastructure, warehouse development, seaports, and others, etc. On IT, our main focus will be on building up the robust and competitive digital ecosystem. So all in all, as of now, we identified our investment capacity for the infrastructure was around 10 billion euros. Hence, the 3Cs initiative priorities are in line with the recovery needs of Ukraine, and especially interconnection and integration of the Ukrainian infrastructure to the European energy transport and digital infrastructure. Thus, as First Vice Prime Minister said, under the Ukraine plan, we are now developing sectoral investment frameworks and key policies, and we are interested in experience for sure the 3Cs initiative countries and attracting the potential long-term investments and financing from funds like 3Cs investment fund. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. in the interest of time, I think you already answered to the question on what can the free seas do for the reconstruction of Ukraine.
Well, we are absolutely looking for on the one hand, on long-term infrastructure funding and project finance, which is clear that must be raised for the upcoming projects in Ukraine. Then de-risking, which is also the important thing, like war risk insurance, backstop. Well, we have some sort of the ecosystems as for now for the private investors. I mean, the multilateral MIGA, U.S. Development Finance Corporations that are now, provide the investment guarantees for the potential investors. Then we are looking for the EBRD, probably one more project on the trading risk coverage for inland and maritime goods in transit. Then we have export credit agencies for coverage, the war risk for potential investors. So what would be our call to action, just to identify feasible investment project in Ukraine and jointly, provides like the feasibility study and then real long-term funding for those projects. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just to mention that some of our speakers had to leave because they had other commitments. Yeah, you too. Okay. So we still have half an hour and 5 speakers. Our next speaker then, in the interest of time, is Ms. Pilar Solano, Department Director, European Investment Bank. Sorry.
Thank you so much. I didn't realize we had already half an hour, but we are mindful that we're standing between you and lunch. So I'm going to try and make it very brief. So thank you for inviting the European Investment Bank to be part of this panel. We are representing part of the group only. Our colleague Roger to my right is representing the European Investment Fund. We constitute together the European Investment Group. I believe most of the audience knows who the European Investment Bank is, but we're owned by the 27 member states. We are AAA rated, been in business for 65 years, and largely known for our long-term lending. That's our core business, so we qualify as part of this table as an investor, even if it is a public sector investor. We do business across sectors, with all clients. We are present in the private sector, we are present in the public sector, and we are aligned with the 3 Cs initiative insofar as the strategic priorities of investments in transport, energy, and digitalization are concerned, also because that mirrors the EU green and digital priority agenda. So even if we are best known for our long-term lending, we also deploy other type of financial instruments that we tailor to the different projects. We are active in issuing guarantees to large corporates or mid-caps. We are active most recently, but in purchasing green bond issuances. We are very happy with this new practice. We'd also engage to a lesser extent, but still a bit, in the risking through taking equity type risk in complement to what our colleagues in the EIF do through investments in funds. We do either co-investments or we do deploy our venture debt kind of products. So what does this translate in the 3 Cs initiative region? Excluding Greece, the new country, and excluding Ukraine and Moldova, we did last year, only in the 12 countries, we deployed 12 billion. That is across sectors, that is across clients. Sorry, it was 10, and it's going to be 13 this year, with an increase, a notable increase in energy and infrastructure, most notably through electrifying the rail system. So our portfolio is relatively split and balanced. Some concrete examples in the region that are recent, we're supporting the modernization of the rail network in Czech Republic. We're supporting renewable energy in the Baltics and in Poland. We are supporting also universities in Latvia and Romania. We have a very diverse portfolio. Now, the region, we agree with previous panelists, the region is very dynamic and offers a lot of opportunity, but it is not without challenges. So as we know, and we relate to what the IMF was alluding to in terms of the macro, at the moment, the growth is subdued, interest rates are very high on the back of very high interest rates, supply chains have been disrupted, and that leads to most of the private sector, not so much in the public sector, but in the private sector, there have been significant delays to investment, okay? Because it suggests that it is going to be more difficult to recover. So we analyzed as well the barriers to investment specifically from the region. The EIB conducts the survey every year on the region that alludes on points at what are the barriers for firms, both from the private sector and public sector, to invest? And I wanted to share with you the top 3, which include uncertainty about the future, more so than the average in Europe. That is most likely due to the proximity of the region to Ukraine and the instability that it generates. The second one is the unusually high energy costs, also because the region was accustomed to much lower than any other parts of Europe. And the third one is something that we're not talking about as part of the 3Cs initiative, but it's the severe lack of skilled labor. And so, putting all of those in place, at the EIB, we have prioritized 4 areas for the region itself, and we are welcoming the 3Cs initiative to team up with those instruments that already exist to implement the ambition around the agenda of more connectivity, both in digital, transport, and energy. And so,
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you in the interest of time.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have 2 very short. So the next one is Mr. Jake Levine, Chief Climate Officer, U.S. International Department of Finance Corporation, and after that, Mr. Mikhail Kidureli, CEO, Enterprise Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you all. I know it's getting very hot in here and very late, so I'm going to try to be quick and peppy. So I want to just briefly introduce the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. For those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, we're in fact we're the newest U.S. federal agency. We're the U.S. Development Bank. And you may be wondering, what is a development bank who's focused on low-income countries, who's focused on emerging markets? What are we doing in Europe? Well, we have a very important mission, which is driven by a statutory mandate from the U.S. Congress under a bill called the European Energy Security and Diversification Act, which provides DFC explicit authorization to work across Europe in high-income countries, which we're normally restricted from working in, so long as our investments in high-income countries serve the purpose of enhancing energy security in the region. And the work that we do in this area focuses on building regional resilience, connectivity, energy security through both supply-side diversification and also demand-side management and enhancement of clean energy technology and innovative technologies. We've recently closed several important transactions in this area. We worked with the Czech company Energo Pro to guarantee a $545 million bond to increase smart grid and new grid technology in Georgia and in Bulgaria. We have financed more than $1 billion this year for gas diversification projects in Moldova and in Poland. we were able to help, and we've been very proud of the work that we've been doing to help those countries completely diversify at a new level from their use of Russian imported gas. And I'm very pleased to be able to report that actually as of this morning, the documents have been signed on the 3Cs Investment Fund with DFC's $300 million commitment to that fund. We are all in, we're 100% committed, and we're looking forward to, I think, to Ambassador Mosbacher's point, which was well taken, to talking about what comes next. What are we going to do next to ramp up investments, to do more in this region? One of the things that we're focused on, and we've been focused on since the beginning, in fact, before the war, during the war, and we will be focused on after the war, is supporting Ukraine and the Ukrainian private sector and the business community. We now have nearly $1 billion of capital committed in Ukraine across several sectors of the economy. We recently announced $25 million for the tech fund, Horizon. We're working with Vladimir's old bank, Bank Lviv, to help mobilize more than $250 million for small business and medium-sized enterprises, which form the backbone of the economy, creating a tax base and jobs and economic opportunities. And we've committed $50 million just in the last quarter to the Guaranteed Trade Finance project in partnership with the IFC, which is our first foray into trade finance and will help importers inside Ukraine get key materials, supplies to support their businesses and keep the economy going. This is a challenging time, and I think that goes without saying, but I wanted to mention something that has gotten me very excited about what's happening in this part of the world, which is that there is a revolution in clean energy, which I think is moving faster than any of us even realize or could have predicted. Consider the following numbers, which I found really persuasive. In Central and Eastern Europe, solar and wind energy capacity is growing at twice the rate as the rest of the EU, 28% as compared with 15%. In Europe, heat pump sales have grown by 40% as compared with last year, with 3 million units deployed in 2022, and year-over-year growth at more than 100% in certain markets, including in Poland. Romania has created key incentives for this market, as has Poland and others. And electric vehicle sales are up 61%. They were up 144% the year before. And Central and Eastern Europe, those numbers are even higher, but the reason is that the baseline is so much lower. So as we look to what DFC can do to increase its financing in this region and to help accelerate the clean energy transition, which will be key to regional security so that we can reduce our dependence on the kinds of fossil fuels that had enabled Russia to provide manipulation and malign influence in these markets, we feel totally optimistic that in fact there are more opportunities than we will be able to work on. And I think to Ambassador Mosbacher's point, we have a lot of work to do to get the word out, which is why we're here to let folks know that DFC is eager to be financing your projects. We have tools ranging from debt to equity to technical assistance. And we have tools that I think can get to the core issue that was raised at this table, which is how do we bring the private sector into the picture? And those tools are guarantees primarily and political risk insurance. The guarantee and our insurance product at DFC are critical for giving the private sector the comfort that they need to de-risk transactions and to come into the market with confidence. Let me just close by saying that, again, DFC has been an early supporter of the 3Cs initiative. We've been committed specifically to the fund, but also to projects that come downstream from the fund and throughout these key member states. And we will be here for the long term. So please don't be shy. We're looking forward to meeting with you. If you have investment opportunities that you would like to discuss, we would like to get to tangible and concrete outcomes, and we really look forward to continuing the work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now the next speaker, if it's okay, I try to manage with all this. Mr. Roger Havenit, Deputy Chief Executive, European Investment Fund.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I understand we have very limited time. Let me say that investments were raised by all the presidents yesterday and today. EIB Group is probably the biggest investor in the 3Cs area. We are a subsidiary focusing on SMEs and support every year 400,000, many of which in this area. We are also the biggest fund of funds in the EU, and we mobilized in the past 65 billion as a subsidiary just in this region. So this gives you a bit the order. Now, what should we do? We have done already a lot. We have developed ecosystems in the Baltic states under the Baltic Innovation Fund mandate, and it has been very successful. We have a vibrant ecosystem there. We have also worked in the Central Eastern European area with CEFOF, another fund-of-fund approach, which is doing extremely well, both in terms of investment leveraged, but it does not represent yet all the member states. What should we do to come to the next level? There are three things, in my view, in order to respond to the political priorities defined clearly by the presidents. First, we need to work together. Although the EIB Group has enormous amounts available in the toolkit, it's still finite. And it's not 50 million which will make the difference. What we need is to crowd in private investors. And in order to do it, we need indeed to have schemes that build on the successful features that allow to increase the resources, the firepower, to support professional fund managers from the private sector that can indeed select the best companies. We need to be able to attract investors by having terms that are aligned to market practices, and we need to build up expertise. Secondly, we need to think multilaterally, cross-border. It was stated over and over again. If we look at companies that grow in the innovation space, they no longer are a company of country X. They soon internationalize, become global companies. And also from the investor side, they attract investors that are not only from one country, but have a broader geographical and geostrategic orientation. If you look at Europe compared to the US, for instance, we see that companies receiving risk capital on average receive 5 times more in the US than in Europe. If you look at it from the fund size, we see that funds of a bigger size, say 700 million, are much more prevalent in the US, 7 times more than in Europe. We have taken structural measures about it through a scale-up program, but more needs to be done, and certainly in the area of the 3 Cs. Last but not least, we need to have a dedicated investment program that takes up the best features of the Baltic Innovation Fund and CEFOF and seeks complementarity with numerous national initiatives that target more the early stage. And it needs to be implemented in cooperations with our partners on the ground. The national promotional institutions from the public side, certainly also the governments, but certainly also with our financial partners from the private sector. I see potential in this, a lot in the 3 Cs area. I see the possibility to have real value for business in the ecosystem. In order to achieve it, we need to have the significant dry power, the firepower to serve 12 or now 13 countries. We need to have conditions, terms and conditions that make sense, are aligned on market realities. We certainly need the governance and the macroeconomic features that were outlined by Helge before. But beyond that, we need also to have more expertise and professional fund managers and that are able to crowd in private investors. And last but not least, we need to have team play. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you for raising awareness on the Innovation Fund. Thank you. And now it's Mr. Michael Chidureli, Enterprise Georgia.
Dear guests, just wanted to start
My
also.
apologies for the delay.
Say again? No problem. I just want to start before my comment once again to highlight and underline our full support for Ukraine and Ukrainian people. We have bitterly felt the same aggression from Russia multiple times, first in 90s and then in 2008. So we fully stand with you. Regarding our role in 3Cs initiative, even though not being an official member, I think we're an important part of the region. And I think one of the best demonstrations of that is the Black Sea underwater electricity cable that our prime ministers, Romanian prime minister and Georgian prime minister with other countries signed in Bucharest in December, which means that we will have a South Caucasus green energy exported to European Union through Georgia. And I think this will strengthen our energy security and the region's energy security. And we all know that energy security is a backbone of the country's geopolitical security. Regarding our investments, we see that you can identify either your regional neighbors either as competitors or partners. So there's two ways to look at it. I always try to take a partner side, so more investments coming to the regions, it means that the region will be richer and every country will benefit. So we have a strong partnership with different countries, multi-selling our investment value propositions, for example, with Azerbaijan, because we complement our investment potential sectors with each other. There are areas that we can cooperate. Regarding the Georgian aspirations, you all know that we are a European Union aspiring country, signing European Association Agreement in 2014, which was recently upgraded to European perspective, and we are very confidently looking forward for EU candidacy by the end of this year, which will mean that we will have a even strong cooperation with the countries in the region regarding infrastructure, regarding different projects in connectivity, transportation, logistics. You know that this year we are starting a deep sea Anaklia deep sea port project in Georgia. The construction will commence this year, which will have another benefit for the region in terms of connectivity by maritime resources. So I know that we are short in time, so I will generously share my time with other delegates. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And finally, last but not least, Mr. Richlav Mensah, Regional Director for Trade and Investment, Department for Business and Trade, UK. Please.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be very, very brief because I don't want to come between you and your lunch. Very, very quickly, the UK fully supports the objectives of the 3Cs initiative, particularly the investment fund for which we have talked about briefly this afternoon. And we also welcome the launch of the Innovation Fund, which will, of course, complement the fantastic work of the Investment Fund. Before I talk about the 3SI and investments in general, I want to touch on UK's investments in this region. We, of course, remain one of the biggest investors in this region. The stock of our investment in the 3Cs region now exceeds £10 billion. And some of the most dynamic British companies have invested billions in this region over the years. Think of Jaguar Land Rover and their significant investment in Nitra in Slovakia, which have created hundreds of jobs. AstraZeneca's Global Clinical Trial Center in Warsaw is only one of 6 globally, leveraging the fantastic tech and science talent in Poland. And right here in Romania, companies like the London Stock Exchange Group and Vodafone have continued to expand and invest. So why has UK businesses invested so heavily in this region? Well, three key reasons springs to mind. The first is the huge economic growth that we've seen in the last few decades. The average growth rates in this region far exceeds that of the EU average and those of Western Europe. Average incomes in countries like Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia now equals those of Portugal and far exceeds that of Greece, which of course joined the initiative yesterday. The second reason why British firms are really keen in this region is the sound institutional structures and investment-friendly policies, including some really attractive incentives for which Romania has done some really good work on. UK businesses, like most businesses, value certainty and predictability, and they get that from these markets, certainly compared to other emerging markets in Asia and Africa. The third, and perhaps the most important point, relates to the fantastic human capital in this region. This region has one of the best skilled workforce in the world, and unsurprisingly, one area that this region really excels at is tech, which some of the earlier panelists talked about. I am absolutely certain that the next Google, Amazon, or Facebook will probably come from the UK, but that is because UK tech ecosystem is very much plugged in the network here, so we are fully collaborating in all sorts of areas which will help UK businesses excel. And I think as a result of our close collaboration between our businesses, we are also seeing some investments from this region to the UK, particularly in sectors that sit at the heart of the 3Cs initiative, including on energy. And final point, if I may, because I really don't want to get between your lunch, I'm absolutely certain that the UK and the City of London in particular will play a key role in generating the significant private sector investment needed for the investments